Good evening from Vietnam. Thanks a lot for spending your afternoon joining our Inside Sharing show and share your stories with our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners of the show, Jonathan, I want to say thank you to your generosity spending time with us.
It's a delight to be joining you and your listeners on your podcast.
It has been 10 years since you haven't been back to Vietnam, so please take our official invitations so that if the next time and your family ever plan to travel to this part of the world, you have a new friend, new family here, and then we will be so happy to take you guys around town, all right?
It will be great to come back to Vietnam. It's been a while since I've been there, Ho Chi Minh City, and the people of the city were so generous, so kind, so lovely when I was last there. I'm looking forward to coming back.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just a quick reminder, it's a great honor for our audience if we can have you to do a little introduction about who you are and the works that you do. Can you please do that?
Oh, I'm delighted to do so. I'm Professor Jonathan Passmore. I am a professor at Henley Business School, a professor of coaching and behavioral change. I am also the Senior VP at Coach Hub, a digital coaching platform. I'm a chartered psychologist and chair of the British Psychological Society Division of Coaching Psychology.
Wow. Jonathan, for the many years and awards and all the great works that you've been doing, you introduced about yourself and the works that you do in less than 20 seconds. So we're gonna dive into your journey to understand it all, in a deeper level. Is that okay with you?
Be great to do so.
Alrighty, so let's travel time. All right. When I was young, I always wanted to become an astronaut. So wearing the astronaut suit and jumping in a different planet, but life did not give me any opportunity to do anything like that. All right. So when you were young, what was your dream about your future, though?
Well, I guess like many young boys who grew up in the 1960s and the 1970s, my very earliest dreams were about being an astronaut. I
Ah,
saw Neil Armstrong and others journeying into space, traveling to the moon. And like you, I had that dream, that aspiration to follow those heroes into space, to do science and exploration. I watched on television Star Trek To Boldly Go, where no man has gone before. So that idea of adventure and journey was part of it. That idea about science and exploration was part of it. Encountering danger was part of it. As I grew a little bit older, I also wanted to be a professional football player. So I loved football. I played a lot of sport. I was reasonably good at football, so got selected into sports teams. And so the idea of playing professional football, playing for the team that I like, Tottenham Hotspur, Spurs,
ah, the
playing for
Spurs.
England, playing in the World Cup, all in tournaments in the FA Cup, were all dreams that I had when I was a boy growing up. And then as I continued to go through school, as I went into secondary school, then my dreams continued to change and to develop, and I was interested in history. So I still have a love for history. I have a love and a fascination for human behavior and what I call now today psychology, but I wasn't really thinking of it in psychological terms, but it was understanding people's behavior. Why do we do this? Why do other people do that rather than this? So exploring those aspects, and that combination, I guess, has led on to a career that has been very much to do with working with people, helping people to be the best that they can achieve, and also having my own aspirations to understand myself and my own personal journey, to understand why I do the things that I do, and to really strive to be the best version of who I am.
Ah, Jonathan, out of the 481th person joining our show, only you, me, and one more person had the dream when we're young, being an astronaut when we get out. And then the 478th person had all different kind of, like desire of when they what they want to be becoming, when they grow up, right? So Thanks for sharing that. You starting to have the love to understand human behavior, why people behave certain way. During what age do you remember?
Well, certainly I was referring then to my teenage years, but even with small friends and their younger brothers and sisters when we were playing out across the fields at home, just thinking about why did they do that has been a constant question. So that understanding of human behavior. And I truly believe that it's not just me, that we as humans are all psychologists. We're all interested in understanding other people's behavior so we can build more effective relationships with them, that we, in those instances, to be able to play with them, to be able to climb trees with them, to build a den, to be their friend. And as we get older, to be a work colleague, to motivate them, to inspire them, and also to persuade and influence other people becomes an important part of what it is to be an adult. Whether that's in a sales context, we're selling, or we're negotiating over a second-hand car. How do I get this salesperson to sell it to me at the price that I want to pay for it, rather than be persuaded by them to pay the price that they want me to pay? So influence and persuasion are all around us in our lives, and that's part of human behavior. And so my thinking is we're all psychologists because we all want to understand ourselves and we all want to understand other people better to make better relationships.
But back then, if you look at the journey that you grow up, right, you want to become an astronaut at some point and be, want to be a football player sometimes, and then become, fall in love with history, and then fall in love with human behavior. So by the time you get into a university, why you all into psychologists like that? You become a psychologist?
Yeah, so my journey to psychology was much more of a route through traditional management. So I started in management, I studied in organizations doing operational roles. Then I did management roles where I was leading teams quite early in my career. Within probably 18 months, I had a team of people who I was leading. And I think that in my role here at Coach Hub, this is my 12th or 13th leadership role that I've performed in my career, and a career that spreads back 40 years of leading teams, of leading and working with people. So it was that journey of doing a job and then finding I'm leading a team of 3 or 4 people. How do I work with them? How do I, when I'm much younger than many of them, how do I try and get them to do what I want them to do? How do I help to introduce changes into what they're doing to make the team better? And that role led on to a series of other leadership roles, and gradually my interest formally in management, first of all, grew. So I did an MBA, and then when I'd become a chief executive of a mental health charity, I then got interested more formally in psychology. And that's when my journey into psychology started. And my journey started by applying for a master's degree in work psychology at a local university. And as I said, I'd done a few years beforehand an MBA. And I was thinking, well, I'd like to go and do another degree. What would help me understand the whole mental health issues of the organization that I was working in? So broaden my understanding there, but also understand and work with the people in the organization better that I'm the chief executive for. And I applied to the local university, this is in the UK, and they said, I'm sorry, you can't come on this program because we only take people who have got an undergraduate degree in psychology. And I said, well, I don't have that. They said, well, I'm sorry, we can't accept you onto the program. We need that as the entry qualification. So I thought, rightio, I'll go and get one. So I say that to them. I went away, did an online with the Open University, an online psychology undergraduate degree. And I did that alongside of my job. So I was doing that, studying of an evening. And that took me 2 years to do, and I was able to use my other undergraduate degree with some of what we call in the UK CAP points. So you're able to use prior learning to count for 1 year of the degree. So I did the second and third year of it, completed it, took that back to the university a couple of years later and said, well, I've now completed that. I've got a first class undergraduate degree in psychology on top of my MBA, on top of my first degree. Can I apply for the course now? And they said, wow, we are so impressed with your commitment. We'll give you a bursary to cover your fees on this master's degree. Oh, thank you. That's lovely. So that was £10,000 of value that university provided. So I then did the course, and I agreed with my employer, still this charity, to undertake the master's degree. And so I was working part-time running the organization and part-time doing 2 afternoons a week and some evenings doing the master's degree. All of the studying was done on weekends, to assignments and such things. And so over the course of a year, I completed that course, and that got me interested in, well, actually there are some things that I'd like to do more to go deeper into this. Maybe I could do a PhD.
Wow. And
that took a couple of years to organize. And by then I'd transitioned from the chief executive to a consultancy company. And that came about from just chance happenstance, really, in that somebody who was on the master's degree that I was on saw me contributing, and they said, you'd make a fantastic consultant. You know, when we've done group work together, you're a collaborative person, you're drawing out other people's ideas, you manage the project really well. I work at PricewaterhouseCoopers. We are recruiting at the moment. Why don't you apply? Let me put your name forward.
Wow.
Just to be honest, I'm going to get a bonus if they recruit you. It's a recruitment bonus, but I think you'd be a really good fit. So they sent me details. I filled out the application. I think I went through 4 interviews with different people. They offered me a role as a consultant, and I joined the PwC team, worked there for a while. Wasn't really the space to do a PhD. I was interested, but the nature of those jobs, a lot of traveling, wasn't going to be possible. And so during that time then, I really concentrated on looking at change, so was very interested in those themes. And then PwC, the consultancy team, got sold to IBM. So we as a consultancy team all moved across, and we spent some time working at IBM, and still no opportunity to do the PhD, still had that dream in my mind. And it wasn't until I moved to a smaller bespoke consultancy company who worked in the City of London, did that opportunity when I negotiated joining, that they said, yeah, we're interested in giving you more flexibility of doing the job, and that you could start a part-time PhD. I found a university in London, and initially my topic was going to be about organizational change. But as coaching was beginning to emerge, and we're talking early 2000s still, coaching was beginning to emerge, and there was very little research. I thought this is going to be an interesting area of activity. I'd done a little bit of coaching. I'd done a coaching training course back in the 1990s while I was the chief executive of this organization, just a distance learning course that gave some basic skills. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe coaching is going to be a very interesting topic. No research on that. I could make a contribution here. And I think if you're looking for defining moments, that probably was a defining moment. And my belief is that success comes from a combination of elements. It comes from hard work and individuals applying themselves. So there is some truth in the fact 10,000 hours. I don't think that's a very helpful number because people fixate on the number, but hard work and practice and repetition certainly improves people's performance. And I think one of the famous golfers once said, I just don't understand it. The harder I practice, the luckier I get. And that, I think, has been a little phrase that I've held in my mind, that actually hard work, conscientiousness, we describe it in psychology, has paid off, that my commitment to continued study and applying myself has been helpful for me. And I think the other thing is catching the wave. Sometimes you find yourself at the front of the bus queue. You don't know when the bus is going to come. You don't know which bus you've missed. But if you are lucky in getting your timing right, that you end up at the front of the queue, and when you get on the bus, you have the choice of the seats. And it's the same in terms of coaching, that I was lucky in that early period of being just engaging with coaching in the late 1990s, doing a little bit of coaching practice in the early 2000s, and as coach training started to take off, and there were people who were providing that in the 80s and the 90s, John Whitmore, Laura Whitworth, the ICF and the MCC had got courses that were just starting, but the scale of it was still very small. Contributing then in designing courses in the early 2000s, getting involved in lots and lots of coaching consultancy activity, being a coach, running teams of coaches to deliver coaching in the early 2000s, just meant that I, by luck, was towards the front of the queue, and that bus stop that I've just described as my metaphor. And that meant that really, as coaching continued to grow, as that wave has developed over the last 20 years, I have caught that wave that has carried my career and other people's careers forward, and has meant that because of my experience, my engagement in research, that PhD that I'll go on and talk about in a minute has really enabled me to be one of the key figures in the development of evidence-based coaching, really, over its early stages of the emergence of coaching as an organizational and personal behavioral change intervention.
Wow.
And so hard work and luck have probably been two factors.
I know it now, hard work and luck, but we're going to dive into that deeper again, all right? So when you found the love for psychology, then you tried to get your master degree, right? But then you didn't have the qualification to get to your master degree yet. So and then you went around and looked for ways that you can get the certifications and the degree so that you can go into the master degree, and that shocked the school. But back then, do you know why is that you are so persistent into getting a higher education in psychology like that, and even into the PhD later?
Yeah, I think my focus on education and one might even say my Christian Quaker Christian ethos about hard work come from my family, particularly my mother, who was a working class woman who left school at 14, didn't have the benefits of education, but saw that the people who were successful in their careers, who had opportunities, came from education. And so my interest, my drive, my motivation around education has come from that. We didn't have a particularly easy childhood. We didn't have a lot of money as children, as a family. And so an encouragement from my parents, particularly from my mother, to become educated, to see education as a way of developing ourselves, developing our careers, escaping from the financial situation that we were in. And we weren't destitute, we weren't in poverty, but we had a working class upbringing, and the education for my parents was a way to be able to move from working class jobs into middle class jobs. And so an encouragement that I would go to university, an encouragement that I would see education as being important, came from them, as did, and they both of my parents and my grandparents had a really strong work ethic. There was never a time when they were not in work. They worked long hours, they worked hard, they were loyal to their organizations that they worked for, and those standards have been ones that have been ingrained into me, and that I place a lot of importance on loyalty, a lot of importance in trying to work hard and to do the best that I can. I don't always succeed, and possibly they didn't always succeed, but you try your best. And they certainly had that particular approach. And when I've come to studying, This is how I've ended up with 5 degrees. That's unusual, probably. That some people have 1 or maybe 2 degrees. I've met a few people in my career that have got 3 degrees, but it's unusual to get 5 degrees. And that has been that fascination with learning and curiosity, combined with a real drive for education to try and do the best. So I had 2 first-class degrees, 2 master's degrees, and a PhD. And I have taken professional qualifications in coaching, in team coaching, in supervision, in one-to-one coaching, 2 different professional bodies that I'm members of. And all of those aspects, I guess, are a desire to continue to learn. And I hold the view that when I stop learning is the time that I've got to stop working.
Wow.
Because as humans, the thing that I think that separates us from other species is that we are fantastic learners. We observe others and we learn from them. We can learn through doing, we can learn from studying, we can learn from observing others. And then we incorporate all of that into our behaviors that has enabled us to be the top species at the moment on the planet.
Wow.
Maybe we're not learning very effectively at the moment. When we look at the environmental crisis that we have, when we have a look at the disparities between the global north and the global south, there are many things that we as humanity still have got to learn and have got to change in our behaviors if over the next 150, over the next 1,500 years, we're going to continue to be the top species on the planet and maintain the standards of living and spread that across all of humankind, not just limit it to 5% or 20% of our global population. But these are challenges maybe we'll talk about more as that conversation develops.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. I think that your mom demonstrated very, very, very powerful thing in your life that, encouraged education and stuff like that, because that little seed that she did when you were young, that built up the big tree and the dream for you to expand, constantly expanding your education and the curiosity to learn more and more, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I need to go to the next question, which is catching the wave. All right. So you were saying this was a lucky, but but my mentor also is my boss, and he told me that opportunity, run in front of our eyes every moment. All right. It's just that whether or not we can see it, and even if we saw it, whether or not we'll be able to catch it is also a different ball game, right? So how did you catch the change and the wave in the coaching to get into the front seats too early back then, though?
Yeah, I don't want to place any importance on the fact that I sat one day in deep reflection or did a massive market analysis of future trends and came to the insight that coaching was going to be a global business that I could play a part of. It was entirely luck. And I could have got on other buses that were at the bus stop when I came up. So one area that continues to fascinate me and that has some parallels with it is appreciative inquiry. And I could have got on the bus of appreciative inquiry. And I am sure that I would have done some interesting work in appreciative inquiry. I'm sure I would have made a small contribution into that field. There are other colleagues who I know who got onto the bus of appreciative inquiry at that time, people I was talking with, and they've written interesting books, they've written case studies and papers around this. There are great conferences around appreciative inquiry, and I'm still fascinated by the power of conversation and how conversation and positive psychological scholarship and ideas can contribute towards, and strength can contribute towards change. But it wasn't the bus that I got on. I could have got on other buses about psychometrics, and I'm interested in psychometrics and the role that they can play in helping people to develop greater self-awareness, and that as a springboard into change. But that wasn't a bus that I got on either. And it was just a combination of different circumstances that meant that I got on the coaching bus. And that when I got on the bus, there weren't many people on the bus, and so I was able to sit in a prime seat. And that when other people have got onto the bus, they're sitting in further back, if you like. And of course, we are only sitting on the bus until the bus driver tells us to get off. And so there have been other colleagues, great colleagues, who have made significant contributions to my career, my understanding about coaching, have been heroes, mentors, trainers of mine who have now got off the bus. Sir John Whitmore. John was an inspiration to me and was encouraging, enthusiastic, developed and contributed to my thinking. But the time came, and the bus driver said, "John, it's your time to get off the bus." And Sir John Whitmore is no longer with us here. Tony Grant at Sydney University. Tony was foundational in coaching psychology, and his work around evidence-based and psychological aspects of coaching really over the whole period from 2000 to when he died in 2020 has been significant. And Tony and I were great friends over almost all of that period of the time that he was working and contributing. And his work too has been a significant contribution both to the field and to me individually. And there are other people, Laura Whitworth, David Gray, as other names that I could name, Alison Wybrow, people who are no longer on the bus, but got on in those early days, contributed significantly to the field. And I guess you're interviewing me at this moment, but maybe in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you'll be talking to other people who are now driving the field forward. We only have the front seats of the bus for a short while, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, sometimes 25 years. But the time comes when we get off the bus and somebody moves into our seats to push the journey of coaching and evidence-based practice forward another step. Wow. So it's luck, entirely luck in my case. I didn't see some great vision. I am interested in behavior. I'm interested in working with people and relationships with people. But it was just lucky it was this bus.
Jonathan, lucky is one of the way easy to explain, right? But you in the bus early, you got an early seat in the bus in the front, right? And would you call it prime seat also come in with a bigger responsibility to make sure that you drive the profession into the right direction and grow the profession. So it's not that easy. People coming late can have, the frameworks, the works, everything already been in place already, right? So back then when everything was in a very early baby stage, how did you working your way out to to create and then grow the coaching practices?
So I think I've had a vision from the relatively early, and I probably mean 2005, 6, 7. The coaching as it was growing needed to go in a particular direction. And that direction should be one that was a combination of practice and science, and following, if you like, a medical model. And the medical model for me is one where you have GPs who are, so general practitioners, your individual doctor, who meets with patients, a coach who meets with clients, who is highly skilled at working with them, but being skilled, being accredited, being trained, operating to an ethical code, but they also do so and are continually informed by research and evidence. And some clinicians, not all clinicians, are engaging in that research, but certainly all clinicians are reading that research and using that to inform their practice. If you went to your doctor today and you mentioned COVID, you wouldn't expect your doctor to say, COVID? Well, yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know very much about it. I've not really read any of the science about it. So couldn't tell you whether the vaccinations are a good thing or not. You would expect your doctor to be aware of and up to date with the latest research and science of what the best vaccines might be, how effective they are, how long that treatment might last, and if you had COVID and maybe another health condition, what other treatments might be available to help you on your journey towards recovery. And I feel exactly the same way about coaching. The practitioners need to be highly skilled practitioners, but they also need to continue to operate in an evidence-based way. So my vision was always about bringing science together with practice. What I didn't want to see emerging, which has happened in some fields, is science is disconnected from practice. You have practice over here, and the practitioners do their own thing, and then you have the academics in universities, they're writing science papers, they're publishing them in journals. These two haven't come together. So I wanted to be the glue that brought the practitioners together with the scientists. I'm not the best scientist and I'm not the best practitioner. But what I can do, I believe, my contribution is to be arguing the case for these group of people, the fabulous scientists that we have, and there are lots of colleagues who are doing great research, is bringing them together with the practitioners and encouraging this interplay between the two, getting the professional bodies, the International Coaching Federation, the MCC, Association of Coaching, Commencer and others to ensure that their competencies, their ethics, their standards, their way of operating looks to evidence-based practice, and trying to get researchers to connect in and share their research and write their research in a way that is engaging for practitioners. So a lot of my work has been in that particular space. So if you look at my publications really over the 20 or 25 years of working, the books that I have edited, there have been some sole authored books, but there have also been many books where I have tried to really curate the ideas of other people and encourage them to write those ideas in a way that are engaging for those people who are learning coaching, those people who are learning leadership, those people who are managers who want to use coaching skills, and make it much more accessible, while at the same time trying to make sure that those practitioners engage with that material. So the idea of taking coach training out from being, what was when I started out, 1 and 2 days courses, or even a workbook that was sent to you in the post. My first course was a booklet that was sent to me in the post. I did that. Then I did the 1 and 2 day courses with other people. Now we're seeing coach training spread into university programs. We're seeing it spread from master's degrees of coaching across the world: Sydney, Oxford Brookes, Ashridge, Henley Business School, Columbia, New NYC, Fielding. There's a proliferation of courses happening, which is fantastic. We're seeing more and more of those. That is good for coaches, that's good for coaching, but also seeing coaching spreading into MBA programs. So there's a module on coaching on an MBA program. There are opportunities for leaders on an MBA program to experience coaching. That's got to be good. It's also good that coaching is spreading into allied health professionals, physiotherapists, dentistry and other aspects where we know that health and well-being behavior is just as important. The prevention aspects are just as important as the treatment aspects. So if we can bring coaching into health, into university education programs, so educators understand how coaching, into schools, into coach driver training, so those people who are learning to drive are taught in a coaching methodology. All of that can enhance learning, and that's what I've seen has been my contribution to the field, is trying to bring these aspects together and spread coaching into new areas of development, of new domains where it can complement traditional aspects of learning. And I would hope that I've got another 5 or 10 years of research and activity and writing to do, and really trying to cement those two fields together is what I would see as my vision moving forward during the 2020s.
And rest assured, the bus driver still loves you sitting in the front seat, so they're not going to ask you to leave.
Sometimes it may not be their choice, and it isn't my choice. You know, sometimes the big man or woman upstairs in heaven says, "It's your time. Time to get off the bus. Come and join me upstairs." And in which case you say, "Yes, indeed," because I have no choice. You know, life is not in our control. It's somebody else's gift sometimes.
Wow. Jonathan, is that okay if sometimes I play a role of devil advocate in this conversation? Is that okay?
Please do.
Okay.
Yes, please do.
Sometimes, right, you know, when I look at your journey, you invest a lot of time on learning, so learning and continuing to build higher education, right? So I believe in the practice, like you say, you know, it has to practice and reputation and hard work. We hone the skills, you know, for you to be better at what you do. Same for the coaching, all right? So and you have to bring the coaching into the academia research, so that you make it the, you know, the practice and the evidence base of the research to make it more solid and to get the result for the people. However, these days the terminology of coaching seems to be so lucrative to a lot of people. So if I, you know, I look onto the CVs that post on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people put the title coach in there. You know, I'm a coach, I'm a coach and stuff. So how can we qualify them again to make sure that, you know, they're you know, we need to have a different, you know, seat for different people in the systems, so that it's not gonna dilute the importances of, you know, coaching, the coaching practice system.
So that's a great question. And I think for leaders who might be listening to this podcast, I would encourage them that when they're looking for a coach, they only appoint coaches, just as the same way if they went to a dentist or they went to a doctor, they would expect them to have a qualification, a license to practice. Coaching is an unregulated field. And of course, anybody can call themselves a coach with no training or with little training, or they might have done a master's degree in coaching. So I would say get a question together, which would ask, number one, what credentials do you have? And expect the coach to be an ICF, International Coaching Federation, or an EMCC, or a Commensa certified coach. Second thing would be to ask about the person's experience, and to get a couple of references, or to find out who have they been working with, how long have they been working, how many hours of coaching have they done, would be useful. And thirdly, to understand whether that person's engaged in supervision. So supervision is a reflective practice, working with another qualified coach to help you to think about how your coaching practice is developing, any issues, challenges, dilemmas of working with clients, and to help you to continue to grow and improve. So those three questions are very useful for managers when they're appointing a professional coach. And there are others that I could suggest as well. But we can differentiate professional coaches from managers who are using coaching skills. Coaching skills can be used by all of us. If I'm leading a team, instead of telling someone what to do, I could to ask them, what do you think your next steps might be? Or to get them to clarify their goal, to clarify a plan of action. So using coaching can help people to grow and develop in our team and gives them more autonomy. And that's part of the reason why we've seen the growth of popularity in coaching as a management style. Those people might need 1, 2, 3 days of training in coaching skills, just like they might need 1, 2, 3 days of coaching, of training to help them not just to be a manager coach, but to also give people feedback. That is another skill that managers use, to be able to give people clear instructions, to direct people well, goal setting skills. These are all often parts of leadership development programs that organizations put into place. And I believe that coaching skills, the manager as a coach, should be part of those training programs that progressive organizations have when they're setting up their leadership competencies and when they're deploying management or leadership training in their organizations. But these are different things. Coaching as a management skill, professional coach. We'd expect a professional doctor to have a formal training. but we still have a first aid kit at home so we can put a plaster on our child's knee. And that's really the difference between the two. We have painkiller tablets that we keep in our high cupboard, or medicine for our children to help them if they have a temperature or they've got a pain. We can prescribe in a small way the right medicine for them, along with a little bit of love and a little bit of listening to help our children to heal. And if that problem continues, that they're not well, then we take them to the doctor. And that's the difference really that I see between coaching skills deployed by managers and a professional coach who might work with you over many months to help you to really make significant transformational steps in your development as a leader.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks, Jonathan. And the next question is about the next stage of coaching, because I'm always curious about where can we catch the next wave, right? So it's been in the space for long. So where do you see it's gonna be in the next future, Jonathan?
Well, I often say that when people ask me about the future, there's one thing that I can predict about the future with absolute certainty. And that prediction is that any prediction I give or that anyone else will give will be wrong. Because the future is trumpet-shaped. It diverges from where we are now. And the further we go ahead, I might be able to predict a little bit of what's going to happen later this evening. So I can look out of the window and I can say, well, probably it's very cloudy, it's drizzling, it probably will be raining this evening. And I've got a reasonable chance that that's going to be the case. Can I predict the weather or how things will turn out tomorrow? Less certainly. 5 days ahead, 10 days ahead, 10 months ahead, 10 years ahead, 50 years ahead. The further we go out, the harder it is to predict whether that's the weather or how particular industries will develop. But having said that, and knowing that I will be wrong, here's a prediction for 2030. I think by 2025, the digital coaching platforms, Coach Hub, BetterUp, Ezra, will be the dominant players in the coaching industry. So enterprise organizations will look to these similar scale organizations who can provide coaching at any time zone, in any language, with certified coaches to large pools of managers across the globe. So if I'm Coca-Cola, or if I'm Meta, or I'm Google, or I'm Deutsche Bank, to look to a big organization who has got thousands of coaches in dozens and dozens of locations across the world and in all time zones, those platform providers will meet that need. And not surprisingly, by the mid-2020s, that will make up a significant part, in my view, of the coaching industry. And alongside them, there'll be other players that will happen. There will be players who will be providing specialist languages or specialist sectors. So if you are operating in Arabic and you have a particular understanding of the Islamic faith, there might be an interest and a need for an Islamic organization to look to an Islamic provider. Equally the same, if I'm operating in the healthcare sector, I might look to a health sector coaching organization who are smaller but have a deeper understanding of my industry. And there might then be sector niche players and cultural or geographical niche players that make up part of the industry. And the third part of the industry that I see will be niche players who are individuals who use their brand as an individual to secure coaching contracts for individual managers. And of course, there'll always be a need for white glove services, a bespoke service for you as an individual, almost like a bespoke tailor makes the suit for you. Many organizations are very happy to go and buy 1,000 suits from Marks and Spencer's or from a big manufacturer, because what we want is scale, we want a minimum of inconvenience, and we want the best price. And a bespoke tailor is not going to make 1,000 suits for 1,000 individuals bespoke at the best price. And so we'll have that combination of individual niche players, sector language, geographical niche players, maybe around industry, and then we will have a handful, maybe less, of global players. And I certainly hope that we will see variety in each of those different levels, that there will be competition for digital coaching services, because that ultimately is good for coaching. It's good for digital providers to have competition from each other. They will each, in a race where you're running by yourselves, you're probably not going to run the best lap time. If you've got other people who are running against you, it encourages all of the runners to do their best performance. So when we're thinking about the interest of coachees, when we're thinking about the interest of organizations they're providing for, and we're thinking about the digital platforms, having competition in the industry will be good for them. That will be true for niche players, and it will be certainly true for the individual coaches who are using their personal brand to win work. But what happens after that? Well, I can see how technology is continuing to evolve, and technology evolution, particularly the introduction of AI and quantum computing. And it's very hard to predict. Is that 3 years away? Is that 7 years away? Is that 15 years away? And the power of that technology to revolutionize coaching. And what we probably will see for the 2030s is the emergence of AI coaching. Why do I want the inconvenience of booking a session with an online coach when I've got my coach who is on my personal device? I call that a smartphone at the moment. I might call it something else by 2035. But a personal device that I can use an app and contact that coach, who's effectively a computer now. I can listen to and engage with that conversation with what feels like a human being, just like an Alexa. But instead of Alexa, I don't have to choose Alexa. I could choose to be coached by anybody. Maybe I choose to be coached by Richard Branson. And Richard has lent his voice to the company. They've paid him, like an actor, a fee. And I then feel as though I'm having a conversation with Richard over a phone or over a digital device, where Richard is asking me coaching questions informed by the science and evidence that we have been collecting for the last 20 years and will continue to collect for the next 10, using open questions, using active listening, using summaries, reflections, affirmations to help me to understand myself, do better planning, inform my decision making, and holding me to account, but at the same time feeling supported and listened to. But maybe it isn't Richard Branson. Maybe it could be Mother Teresa, or it could be another historical figure that could be providing me with that coaching. So the technology is there already for much of this. We need to think about ethical issues around this, and ethical questions such as, it's fine if Richard Branson agrees to lend his brand to this and contracts with that coaching provider to do this. But what about people who are no longer alive? What are the ethical questions about their identity and about their voices? So is it okay to be coached by Marilyn Monroe if Marilyn Monroe is not able to give her informed consent? There are a host of questions around this. And there are a host of questions really also about the technological capability. What's clear is that very simple coaching conversations already, AI apps are as good as a basic coach. What we want them to be by 2030s is to be 10 times better than your basic coach. To be as good as any master coach, maybe better than any coach, because they can draw from a wealth of data. And by then using human voice, maybe VR characteristics as well, virtual reality, the avatars we've seen, the pop stars of ABBA performing as avatars and Avatar. How could we capture a younger version of Richard Branson doing a coaching conversation, or Barack Obama, or any other individual who we aspire to be like, who we hold as an icon, as a hero for us, to invite them into those coaching conversations, either their voice or their physical form in a VR encounter. So I can see how technology that's emerging now could potentially come together to leverage the very best of every coach in the content of the intervention, to leverage the best of technology through AI and VR, continually learning about us, continually learning about all humans and about how we're interfacing and how we're using language, because that changes over time, to then be the very best coach to enable individuals, and available now.
Wow.
At the click of a button, in every single language that you can think of, in any persona that a person would be attracted to, assuming those ethical questions are resolved, and that we have the informed consent of all parties who are being represented in those conversations. Now that, in my view, is the true democratization of coaching, when it's offered at a price point that anybody in our world who has a smartphone, who can afford a smartphone, could access. And so really my challenge, I suppose, in this call today is to all of those entrepreneurs who are out there, is how by 2035 can we have an app that delivers coaching for every human at $1 a month.
Wow. Wow. Jonathan, thanks for sharing your vision on the coaching industry in the next 17 years, right? 13 years. 2035, $1 per month for every single person on earth to use the coaching using their phone. That's a huge vision, and I think with the trajectory that you share, that will, one day we'll get into that direction even sooner than 2035, I think.
So that relies on the development of technology. It relies on us being ethical as entrepreneurs, and it relies upon a coming together of different experts from the technology field and the coaching field to realize that vision. This is not a vision about journeys to put people on Mars. It's about making coaching available for the school child who's doing their exams at 16 or 17 or 18 in Egypt. It's about helping a mother who is in India. It's about helping a leader of a small manufacturing business in Vietnam. It's about helping every single leader, every single parent, every single child across the world, because at $1 a month becomes accessible for almost, and I appreciate not all, but almost all of our planet who can afford a digital device. $1 a month is a price that those individuals will be able to afford. And if you truly have 1 billion users, then you have enough revenue to be able to run that platform in the interests of humanity, not in the interests of 1 or 2 or 3 owners of a business who are becoming multi-billionaires. For me, we need to have a business that is about a good business first, and a business which is highly profitable second. And so combining those profitable businesses, yes, to ensure that investments produce reasonable returns, whilst at the same time also providing good for humanity. And coaching for me is very much about a potential for humanity, all of our people on our planet together, to be able to step forward, to have the opportunity to feel heard, to feel empathized with, to feel understood, even if it is by digital device. But if I experience that someone feels as though they are listening, that I do feel empathized with, and then to be able to step forward, to develop a plan and to be held accountable for that plan, can be liberating for the millions, for the billions of people who are on our planet who have digital devices now, let alone by the time that we get into the 2030s.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jonathan, you mentioned I have two last questions for you in this conversation. All right. And the first question is about thinking. So you mentioned about the word thinking several times in this conversation. And my wife and I, we are on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think because we believe that our thinking capability is diminishing. And if we have a chance to talk to experts like you, we will ask you this question: how have you been helping you to improve your ability to think over the years, Jonathan?
Thinking is a muscle, and muscles develop and stay strong when they are exercised. I share your view that we as a society, in general, spend less time thinking because we are consumed by short-termism and short attentions. Now, that is not universally true, and there is some great thinking, and there are some amazing thinkers, and more of us, because there are more people on the planet, are doing thinking and contributing to human thinking. But for the average person, finding time in our day when we can exercise the thinking muscle is part of that process. Secondly, exposing ourselves to new and controversial stimulates our thinking. And thirdly, thinking in a critical way about the material that we're being exposed to will help us to build and to maintain the thinking muscles that we have. So let me just go and talk about each of those points.
Please.
Too often we spend our time watching television, engaging in social media, and there is very little thinking that we do. We are reacting, and our attention spans are limited or are reducing because we scroll from one LinkedIn or Facebook post to the next. They are limited because our screens provide us with very short excerpts of content before we move to the next scene, before the story moves on. So there's very little in media that allows a deep character development. As if you were reading a book, you often get a very deep understanding about the character. People, on average, and this is a generalization, often when we watch television or movies, they're very fast-paced and the scenes change very quickly. So very little time for analyzing human behavior or the motives of why someone is doing something. So we need to find time. Secondly, we also need to find new content. When we scroll through our social media, it presents us with what we like. It's found out what we like and it gives us more of the same. So we're doing convergent thinking rather than divergent thinking. One thing I used to say, and it's less true now, but it was certainly true in the past, and we can make it true today, is I used to, whenever I went to the doctor or to the dentist or to a location I didn't frequent, I used to sit there and read the magazines. And of course, when you go to the dentist has a whole collection of different magazines that you don't subscribe to. You get Women's Weekly, you get Dentist Monthly, you get a whole range of different topics, horse and hound, things that I'm not interested in, horses or dogs. But wow, how interesting. People are writing about how they train their dog, what they feed their horses, how they look after their gardens, what the current issues are in dentistry. And just by exposing myself, when I'm sitting there in the dentist waiting room, waiting for that appointment, sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour, I can come across things that I've never even thought about, worlds that I've never thought about before. That is great exposure to new types of thinking. It's the same when I go to the library or to a charity bookshop. Sometimes it's fantastic just to pick up a book at random and read it. So when you're in the library, when you're in a bookshop, they sometimes sell you books in a wrapping that you don't know what's in there. They're like a mystery book. And I'll buy one of those and read it. not read the first page and go, oh, I'm not interested in Neanderthals and the development of the Neanderthal brain. What could that tell me about my own world? What could that tell me about how humans think and feel now? Dentistry. What can that tell me about how dental practices are operating that would be useful for my work with clients? So exposure to new ideas, controversial thinking, new thinking areas of practice outside of our own will help out the quality of our thinking, because they develop our own curiosity, stimulate thinking in new directions. And the third thing for me is to think critically about what I'm exposing myself to. So we often take the information that I'm given. And in social media, we know that not all Donald Trump's posts are true. And that's probably true for many other posts, that we should always have a curious mind. Why did this person post this information? What's their purpose? Why did they post it now? What's the alternative view? What facts or evidence support the claims that they are making? And too often, I think that we have become lazy in our thinking to accept that all versions of the truth, as they're claimed to be, have equal value. But as I say that statement, you as the listener are recognizing that cannot be true. There is a truth and there are opinions which may be untrue, or maybe less true, or maybe completely untrue. But only when we start to interrogate those, to understand the motives of why the person has told their story in the way that they have, start to unravel human behavior and gives us a more critical perspective on this. Why has this article been published in this magazine this month rather than last month or next month? Well, because this is a hot topic. So as an academic, there are particular research topics that are very, very popular. If you send them in, you know that your chances of being published. COVID-19 a year ago was an example of this. You did a study around COVID-19. Your chances of being published will be significantly increased compared to a different topic. And there are other topics that go in waves. They're fashionable, they're curious. People will, so the editors believe, be interested in reading this. And so instead say, okay, what does that tell me about what's going on now? And that curious mind, that critical mind, is what we also need to develop alongside that aspect of opening our mind up to areas of practice, areas of ideas, contributions that we don't come across, and making the time to allow ourselves to think, to think critically, to engage with that new material.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that making the time to think is the one that really, really missing in a lot of us these days, and that leading to the fact that we take information in as the faith value, but we didn't even verify or interrogate the information that you mentioned. So thanks a lot for sharing the 3 points that important for us to rethink about our thinking and relearn how to think better. So Jonathan, we're going to the last question for today, and unfortunately we don't have time for the book, and maybe it's another talk that we can have in the future, talk about that. But I'm curious to know, heading into the future, is there anything that Jonathan is working on and he's exciting, he wants to share with us and the audience out there, so that we together can celebrate with you in advance?
Well, I'm going to mention a book. Depends when your podcast is going to go out. But I've got a number of books in train at the moment. One coming out in early 2023 is the Coach Buyer's Handbook. It's worth maybe some of your listeners checking out. When it comes to research projects, I'm currently exploring about the power of digital coaching, and I'm very interested in the processes. So how do we take apart the components of coaching that make a difference? This is useful in terms of helping coach training, but it's also useful in understanding how we create that AI coaching if we better understand the processes that are most helpful in coaching, that will contribute to the development of these AI coach bots that I've described. Now, I'm sure that some people who will have listened to the podcast who are coaches or who are individuals who are thinking about the coaching industry will feel annoyed about the idea that coach bots will replace humans. And I think that just like many other industries, coach bots will not fully replace humans. There is always going to be a role for a human-to-human conversation. But if we're talking about increasing the number of conversations, which coaching is the process that's used for the conversation, if we're going to move from hundreds to thousands or maybe 1 million or 5 million conversations that happen each year using coaching, from 5 million to 5 billion, technology is the way to do that. And we have seen it in other industries, the clothing industry and agricultural industry, that over the history of these industries, you cannot hold back technology. But what we can do as individuals who care about coaching is to ensure that the ethical standards and the processes that are involved are based on science, based on industry best practice, and that their standards of operation are to the highest ethical practices. And in that way, when technology revolutionizes, democratizes, spreads coaching to billions of people, then we know that it is not only truly coaching, but it is done in the best interest of the individuals who are receiving it, rather than in the best interest of the individual or the organization who is providing it. And that is what I want to see at the heart of coaching. That coaching revolutionizes our world, helps us to be critical thinkers, helps us to plan more effectively, and helps more people, billions of people, at all income levels, in all parts of our world, to achieve the satisfaction and joy that their lives can bring.
Wow. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And imagine how the world is going to be, how beautiful the world will be if that happens, right? So Jonathan, thanks a lot for being so generous to spend your time to join our show, share your stories, a lot of insights and great advices, so that tonight we and the listener, we have a lot of things to think and to learn, and also to unlearn and to relearn that things are good for us and good for the people next to us, right? So I want to say thank you. I wish you well, and I hope one day we're gonna see you in Vietnam. All right.
Thank you, Har. Great being with you. Thank you very much indeed. Good night.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a wonderful day.